Welcome in to the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast presented by Wings, etc. My name is Joel Silverberg. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the KIB podcast, whether you're doing so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you for taking the time to check out this show. Please like and subscribe. We'd love to see that subscribe following grow, especially on YouTube. We've seen it grow so much ever since we brought the podcast in video format over the last couple of seasons. So thank you to everybody that has taken the time, whether you're an Ice Bears fan, a fan of another team, or just a hockey fan in general. We really appreciate you taking the time to give us a listen. And we've got a lot to kind of cover today. Obviously, Knoxville getting ready to take on Peoria this weekend. We'll talk to voice of the Rivermen, Jason Ruff, before the show is over as he helps us preview the first matchup of the season between Knoxville and Peoria. Peoria is coming off a really long road trip, went all the way from Illinois to Fayetteville, North Carolina to take on the Marksmen for 3 games in 3 days. Ice Bears will play 2 against the Rivermen in their barn this weekend. And so we'll talk to Jason about that. And then some, and kind of get a little bit of a take on Fayetteville as well, because the Ice Bears do play against the Marksmen coming up later this month. Haven't seen Fayetteville since the season opener. So obviously just be nice to get kind of another unique take, another vantage point of how Fayetteville looks after coming off a pretty strong weekend against Peoria, taking 2 of 3 in that 3-game series down at the Crown Coliseum. Knoxville splitting with Quad City this past weekend. So the Ice Bears have their 4-game win streak snapped, but Knoxville, they do get the win on Thursday before losing on Friday. Dawson McKinney is back in Knoxville. Tyreek Oughton has been activated and is off the IR. And so a lot of changes happening this time of year across the league. And so it's just been very, very interesting to kind of see how this has played out. And apologize for the a bit of the hiatus over the last couple of weeks. Tried to get on with Ken Jacoby, QC Sportsnet of the Quad City Storm, and obviously something came up, wasn't able to do it. I've been kind of battling an illness myself over the last couple of weeks, so just decided to kind of punt on the podcast. And with the midweek games as well, obviously gives us a much shorter week before we can to give us less time to kind of preview everything, get everything set in stone. But appreciate Ken for being willing to come on the podcast. Just didn't work out, unfortunately, to preview the Storm, which is the only time that Knoxville is going to see Quad City during the regular season. So would have loved to have had Ken on to talk about it. We had Joe Winkle on last year to do the show when Quad City came down to Knoxville for Knoxville's home opener in October of 2024. So always appreciate those guys and the work that they do and helping us kind of get situated as much as we can. And Quad City staff sending us roster notes and stuff all the way from Illinois just to get us ready for the broadcast. So I really appreciate Quad City and their cooperation with everything. Just unfortunately couldn't make it happen to get Ken on the podcast last week. But we're excited to have Jason on coming up in the next segment of the show. And again, we kind of mentioned this before, but bummer, Knoxville, they're only seeing Quad City twice. That's the fewest meetings between any opponent that Knoxville has this season. Granted, there are some teams that in this league that don't play all 9 opponents, period. But Knoxville doesn't go to Quad this year. It's a real bummer because it's one of our favorite places to go. We love it. It's a great spot. You heard John Gurskus talk about it on the pregame show interview for I believe it was Thursday's game. So he talks about it. There's just it's nice. The hotel's right next to the rink. There's a lot of good places to eat. The players enjoy going to the casino when they have some spare time. So Quad's a great spot. We love going to Moline, and so appreciate Quad City. Their staff are always taking such good care of us while we're there. Appreciate the hotel staff and management for making our stays comfortable. So bummed that we don't get to go there this season, because some of my favorite restaurants for some of my favorite road stops around the SPHL footprint are in Moline. So bummed. My appetite's bummed that I don't get to head up to Moline this year. But again, appreciate all the Quad City fans that tuned into the broadcast this past weekend and hope everybody enjoyed it. Obviously, Quad City fans probably very happy with Friday's result, getting that win over the Knoxville Ice Bears. But Knoxville getting off to a really strong start on Thursday as we look back on the Ice Bears being able to get off to a fast first period. They scored 3 times in that opening frame and had some opportunities to really expand the lead. And then Quad City really sunk their teeth into that second period. The shot by Braden Stannard was a rip. His 3rd goal in 3 games. Almost scored again on Friday. Had 2 really good looks in the 3rd period where we could be talking about 4 or 5 goals in a 4-game span for Braden Stannard. And he's been great coming off the IR. He's brought a lot of energy. He's brought some offensive firepower. And really goes to show that he's been playing well this second season. Tyler Williams opportunistic here as he takes advantage of the blue line turnover, gets it up to Ryan Kuzmich, who buries the breakaway. And then you have Andrew Karapov later on in the period after the move by Williams on the outside to score that goal with just seconds remaining in the period. And so Knoxville takes a 3-0 lead into the intermission. Quad City, I thought, outplayed Knoxville in the second. I thought they really dominated that period. And for them to only come away with one goal, I think gave Knoxville at least enough defensively to feel like they could make something happen going into that third period. And Knoxville had an opportunity to increase the lead about halfway through the third, wasn't able to do it. But Steven Mundinger, playing as well as he did an excellent job at keeping Quad City's offense at bay. And then on Friday, I think it was really more a matter of how much Knoxville was able to generate opportunities and just couldn't finish them. And so I thought Zane Steeves did a really good job, especially on his glove side of limiting Knoxville's chances. He didn't give up a ton of rebounds. Knoxville had some great rips, I thought, from the slot, from the circles, and Steeves was reading those plays really well. And I think it really ultimately just came down to a matter of trying to sometimes for Knoxville just force things a little bit too much on the power play. I thought Quad City did an excellent job at really sticking to committing to blocking shots in the slot, especially on the penalty kill. And so Knoxville getting all the opportunities that they did, I think it was just more about Knoxville having to settle for perimeter shots at times, shots not getting through. And then when those shots did get through, Zane Steeves did a really good job at seeing them. So credit to Quad City, credit to Zane Steeves and company. I thought Devin Sanders, I know there's a lot of talk about Leaf Matson whenever Quad City is involved. He's one of the best players in the league. He's got great vision. He does a great job at setting up his teammates. But I thought Devin Sanders was maybe the best player on the ice for Quad City that entire weekend. He scored in both games. Defensively, he was really good on the back check. I thought he did an excellent job at helping teammates recover when Quad City at times was on their heels in their own zone. I thought Sanders was really, really valuable for them, especially on Saturday, not having Brody Giroux after he got banged up in Thursday's game, didn't play on Friday, didn't take warmups, wasn't in the lineup. And so, obviously they had the extra bodies where they could kind of do that because they have somebody, Nick McHugh, I believe, is the one that's on the PTO. So had the bodies available where they didn't have to skate short. But I thought both nights, Devin Sanders really stood out. In terms of being able to get on the score sheet, but also what he was able to do defensively. And I thought his efforts gave Quad City a fighting chance in Thursday's game with the Storm getting off to that slow start and Knoxville jumping out to a 3-0 lead. And John Gurskus talked about that. He said, it felt like after the first period on Thursday, we didn't have, we got a little bit complacent and need to be able to multiply that effort for 3 periods. And he said that going into Friday's game, and Knoxville didn't do that. They scored, gave up the equalizer 36 seconds later, caught a bad bounce on the second goal late in the first period, and Knoxville just never really recovered even after tying the game in the second period. I thought Dawson McKinney coming back, he provided a spark. I thought there were some really good moments for him being able to provide a little bit more offense with what he was able to do on the power play. And I think that's been really important for Knoxville because the power play obviously has been off to a struggle. Knoxville started 2 of 27 through its first 11 games, but now they're clipping at about a 22% rate. And here's one of those tough bounces for Tyreek Oughton right after the goal by Williams that allowed Sava Smirnov to score on an empty net, and just a tough break for Tyreek in his first game back after more than a month off. But I thought for Knoxville's power play, now they've scored in 4 of their last 5 games. I think that's really important as Knoxville tries to find some consistency, especially going into an environment like Peoria where Knoxville historically has not had a great deal of success there. They did win there once last year, and so now going to have to try to pick up the pieces a little bit and find a way to win again after having the 4-game win streak snapped. And I think there was a bit of an opportunity lost there for Knoxville. Obviously, the amount of power play chances that Knoxville had were there, but also some really good shots. And Tyreek Oughton made some huge saves late in the second period to keep that game tied. And it was certainly setting up like Knoxville was going to have an opportunity to win the game. They end up giving up the go-ahead goal, and it just doesn't go Knoxville's way as they fall in the opposite direction, then give up the empty netter in the final second. So again, Knoxville had the chances. There's the power play goal by McKinney. I thought that Knoxville did a really good job in a lot of facets, just didn't finish enough. And at times, that's kind of been the difference with Knoxville when it comes to some of these close losses, where it really just comes down to finishing. And Gurskus has mentioned that before. Last year, I think Knoxville was in a bit of a different situation. I thought Knoxville was more at times struggling to generate opportunities and having to win a lot of these low scoring games. Knoxville's got a little bit more offensive firepower now than it did a year ago. And you've seen different players explode. Obviously, Tyler Williams has been very consistent for Knoxville so far this season. He's had a big couple of last 2 weeks. You know, the 4-point game against Roanoke really stood out, but I think in a lot of ways, Williams has been a really consistent contributor, but you've seen other guys just kind of emerge in spurts. You know, we talked about Braden Stannard. Eric Olson, the wink of Thanksgiving, was really big for Knoxville. Blake Tosto had a really good run towards the end of November and has been a really good offensive contributor. You have Dawson McKinney back in the lineup. Ryan Kuzmich, after I think it was an odd run. I think maybe he had 1 point in his first 8 games and then had 8 points over his next 8. So, you know, the second half of the games that Knoxville has played up to this point, Ryan Kuzmich has been really valuable for Knoxville. And I think you're seeing more and more depth from an offensive contribution standpoint. And then occasionally you get guys on the back end being able to contribute as well. Jarrett Cups had a couple of games where he's had, you know, 1 or 2 assists where he's really setting guys up. And he's willing to push the puck offensively. Ryan Orgel, I think, has been a nice spark since being at it. And so I think when you continue to look at how this decor is coming together too, there's a little bit more stability. You've gotten good shifts out of Billy Roach. You've gotten a lot of stability out of Troy Button. Robin Lilliquist, I think his length frustrates a lot of opposing offenses, and he seems to be pretty smart with the puck. And whenever you have guys rotating in there, Cam Toby's on the IR right now, but you're seeing a player that is a little bit more confident with what he's able to do now in his second year. Brendan Daller, second year under John Gurskus, third year in Knoxville. He's up in the ECHL, but a guy that is willing to lay out the body, willing to block shots, willing to stand up for teammates. And so I think you have a nice blend, a little bit of everything when it comes to your defensive core. And so I think Knoxville has to be pleased with where it's at this point in the season, but it does feel like Knoxville is still trying to reach its ceiling. And I think in a way that's a good thing. And John Gurskus is always going to be looking for that ceiling and trying to find it as well. And you'll hear him, he'll critique, he'll give praise, but he's also going to be critical in the areas where his team needs to be better. Even in that, you know, big offensive output against Roanoke right before Thanksgiving, he wasn't happy with how the third period went. He didn't care that his team scored 6 goals in the second period. Obviously, that was nice. And he said ultimately that came down to finishing. But the third period, he thought his team got way too complacent, gave up 4 goals against. And that's never something that you want to do, because even long term, you don't want to give Roanoke, a team like Roanoke, reason to believe that, hey, we replicate that third period, then we can beat Knoxville the next time we see them. You definitely want to be able to put away an opponent early. And in a way, Knoxville did that. Again, we're talking about a 7-goal deficit going into the third period. But I think Gurskus would have liked to have seen a cleaner finish. And that has kind of been a little bit of a theme lately, even in the Thanksgiving Day win against Huntsville. Okay, Knoxville gets the win, but you get that win in regulation if you close out the extra attacker situation with 60 seconds to go. Against Macon, you had a 2-1 lead going into the third, but Macon kind of dominated the period. They got a lot of shots on goal, and credit to Noah Giesbrecht for being able to keep the puck out of the net. So I think for Knoxville, it's you're going to hear John Gurskus talk a lot about wanting to clean up some things, wanting to fine tune some things. That's obviously what you want to hear from your head coach, because it's it's about always wanting to make sure to get better. He's not complacent. He's not content. Player leadership isn't content. They want to keep on competing. They want to keep on winning. And obviously every game in this league has proven to be tough, because now Knoxville's getting ready to take on Peoria. They've seen everybody else in the league. This is the last opponent that Knoxville has not seen yet, and the Ice Bears become the first team in the league this year to see all other 9 opponents in the league. Granted, not every team in the SPHL has that opportunity. I believe, I want to say it's Evansville. I don't think they see Roanoke or Fayetteville this year. I could be wrong on that, but I believe it's one or both of those combinations. And so, yeah, not every team in this league plays one another. And so just for Knoxville, it's an opportunity to kind of get a taste of everybody, and they're going to do it before we get to mid-December. So Knoxville will see the Rivermen coming up this weekend, and we will talk to voice of the Rivermen, Jason Ruff, on the other side as Knoxville gets ready to head up to Peoria for the first time this year. Peoria coming off a big 3-game weekend against Fayetteville. They dropped 2 of those 3 games, but they're getting the goaltending, and that's kind of been one of the big stories surrounding this team so far this season. So we'll talk to Jason about that and then a little bit more around the rest of the league as he's kind of started to make the rounds, going to different parts. He's been to Roanoke, he's been to Fayetteville. They've seen a handful of different teams. And so we'll talk to Jason about his thoughts on what's happening in the SPHL for Peoria and around the rest of the league up to this point in time. Our podcast is brought to you by Wings Etc. We appreciate them for partnering with us once again this year. And we ask that everybody would go check out Wings Etc. on Lovell Road. Just picked it up earlier this week for the wife and I. Wife had a buffalo chicken wrap. Onion rings are great. Love the fries. My wife really loves their garlic Parmesan ranch, that new dip that they've just offered. Get it with a Big Dipper. That's what I got with my buffalo chicken sandwich. It's really, really good. Whether you're doing it with chicken, fries, carrot sticks, whatever it may be, they've got all the sauces, all your needs covered there at Wings Etc. So be sure to go out to Lovell Road in West Knoxville, especially if you're still doing Christmas shopping out by Turkey Creek. Check out Wings Etc. and thank them for partnering with the Knoxville Ice Bears and for sponsoring our podcast. We really appreciate their support. Jason Ruff, voice of the Rivermen, coming up on the other side right here as you listen to the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast presented by Wings Etc.
You're listening to the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast, sponsored by Wings Etc. Good food and great times await at Wings Etc.
Welcome back to the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast presented by Wings Etc. Knoxville getting ready to head up north to Illinois for the first time this season as they will take on the Peoria Rivermen. Again, the final team that Knoxville has not seen yet this year. And Knoxville and Peoria will duke it out for the first time this season starting on Friday. And here to help us talk about that is voice of the Rivermen, Jason Ruff. And Jason, you all just had a lengthy road trip yourselves all the way out to Fayetteville, 3 games in 3 days against the Marksmen. Obviously, logistically, it's always eventful whenever you have to take a trip that long. But what was your biggest takeaway from this past weekend as the Rivermen took on the Marksmen for 3 days?
My biggest takeaway is Waffle House is still the best breakfast place to have breakfast on the road. That was my biggest takeaway. But in terms of the hockey side, which is I believe your fans and your listeners really want to know about the Rivermen, this is a young Rivermen team. When you look back at some of the mainstays that have been a part of Rivermen squads in the past, guys like a Jordan Ernst, guys like a Zach Wilkie, or even Alec Hageman, if you want to go back 2 years ago, those kinds of players aren't there right now this year. And yes, you still have some mainstays like an Alec Bear, like a Michael McChesney, but really the scoring for Peoria has been starting to come from getting shots on net, getting tips, getting deflections, getting rebounds. Most of the goals, if you look at the Rivermen in recent weeks, have come in that form and fashion. It's been very few straight shots, hardly any shots from the outside. And where I think the Rivermen had some challenges with Fayetteville was Fayetteville block shots in layers. And when you can block shots, especially from the outside, and prevent them from getting to the net, that can cause problems and challenges for a team that his offensive identity has been starting to become get shots to the net, get deflections, get rebounds. And of course, got to give a great big shout out to Colby Muse. He played excellent in the 2 games he played against the Peoria Rivermen. Got the shutout on Sunday night as well. First one for him on the season. And on the other side of the ledger, Jack Bostad also played great. Got the 21 save shutout on Saturday. So when you have 2 really good goaltenders, you have 2 teams that do very good defensively. It's always a very interesting battle. But I think we really saw the legs were pretty heavy on Sunday. I mean, like I said, this was a young Rivermen team, their first 3-3, and a 16-hour bus ride from Peoria all the way to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and then 16 hours back. It was very interesting to see how that team dealt with those challenges. I think there definitely were challenges. And we learned that this is just a young Rivermen team. Coach Trudell has kind of said it's almost like an expansion type roster, not quite a rebuild, but some of the mainstays that you would expect to lead the Rivermen offense from years past, guys like a Jordan Ernst, like I said, they're not there. So this Rivermen squad is still in the process of kind of rebuilding, reforging that identity. And right now, it is still a work in progress. I say for right now, because if there's one thing, and we were kind of talking beforehand, if there's one thing, you don't bet against Jean-Guy Trudel. I am very confident he's going to have this roster going before this season comes to an end by the time we hit playoffs.
And you still have some of the usual suspects as well. Alec Bear, Michael McChesney, as you mentioned, are contributing offensively, and you're starting to continuing to see contributions from Griffin Fox, among others. And so what has it been like, though, still having a little bit of a stable leadership core to help guide this team as you all move towards the second quarter of the year?
That's been critical, because when you have leadership that has been through the wars, has been through everything that Jean-Guy Trudel wants out of his players, it's a lot easier for new pieces to come in and pick it up a lot easier. This would be a completely different conversation if it was a completely new team that Jean-Guy would have to reteach how he wants to play the game. He still has to do that for a lot of the younger players, but you at the same time still have some of those older players, guys who have been here over the past year or so, guys like a Mike Gillette or a Garrett Devine or a Josh Martin, who have been here for a little over a year now. So they kind of understand, all right, this is how we do things here in Peoria. This is how we don't do things. And they can help bring in some of those new players and help them understand, okay, when you're playing here at the Peoria Rivermen, this is how we play. Guys like Jordan Henderson, who played with the Quad City Storm for a while and was recently acquired by Peoria. I think it took him maybe about a week or so. Now he's really starting to get the hang of how the Rivermen want him to play.
Yeah, how has that been with all the trade acquisitions? There's been some notable transactions made. Obviously, you acquired Massey, you acquired Henderson, as you mentioned, had Nick Parody for a while before trading him to Quad City. How has that transition been for the newly acquired players that have been kind of used to making themselves a name playing for other SPHL teams?
The one thing I always talk to the new players about that they always mention, they love being in Peoria just because of the culture, the coaching staff, and the expectation of having success and competing for championships. I think it was, not to throw shade here, but I believe when we did our Thanksgiving media, we asked Dylan Massey what was the biggest thing he was thankful for. He said being traded to the Peoria Rivermen. And the reason is because you mentioned, when you have the culture and you have all those guys who have been here already, even if they aren't some of the big mainstays like a Jordan Earth, you still have guys like an Alec Bear, a Garrett Devine. They can help bring you guys in. It's a very welcoming culture. I remember talking with Alec Bear for a long form article I did with him recently, and I was talking to him about the 2024 championship run. And he said, one of the craziest things about that year was they brought in so many guys late, but yet they were all acting and acquisitioning like they had been there for the entire season. I mean, guys just acclimated that quickly. And it's been the same thing here. And I think it's a big reason why the Rivermen, despite some of the turnover, are still firmly in the middle of the pack, threatening to be one of the top teams in the SPHL this year. Again, you got to get a couple of the right roster pieces. They're still building, but I'm going to echo with what assistant coach Eric Levine said at our Christmas banquet not too long ago. He feels like this team's very close. And I get the feeling he's right.
How would you say this team is maybe a little bit different from an on-ice standpoint? Not necessarily better or worse, but what part of the way that this team plays, is there anything that's different than maybe what we've seen over the last couple of years with Jordan Ernst, Zach Wilkie, a couple of notable pieces from this recent stretch for Peoria just not being there right now?
I think one of the things you see that's different, you don't have those game breakers that can just totally take over a game on a consistent basis. Obviously, a guy like Alec Bear and Garrett Devine and Michael McChesney, they can take over a game, and they have the skill to take over the game. And we've seen them do that a couple of times this year. But you don't have a guy like a Zach Wilkie who is just so smart, knows exactly when to pinch in and make a big game-breaking play, or like a Jordan Ernst who can just launch a bomb from the outside and the goalie has no chance to pick it up. I think the big key difference, especially offensively this year, is this team is having to really manufacture the offense from getting those dirty goals in order to build up that confidence. Again, it's a younger team, and the goaltending and the quality of defense going up against some of these teams in the SPHL, especially like we're probably going to see in Knoxville, is so good. Shots from the outside generally don't go in. So you have to really try to force and get those dirty goals, get those rebounds, get those deflections in order to build up your confidence. Because when you're building up confidence and when you're like, all right, we can get that offense going, then those shots from the outside, that's when they start to go in off of either crazy tips or deflections or just a straight shot that goes in. You're like, how'd that go in?
He's Jason Ruff. He's the voice of the Rivermen. Peoria just got done with a 3-game stretch against Fayetteville. Jason, Knoxville's going to see Fayetteville for the first time in 2 months coming up next weekend after our visit up to your neck of the woods. What kind of stands out about Fayetteville as Knoxville gets ready to see them again, and as they, obviously played you all very competitively over the course of 3 days? What has kind of what have you kind of seen in the development of Kyle Sharkey's team in his second year as the head coach there?
Kyle Sharkey's got a really good defensive team right now, and that's not a knock about their offense. I mean, they put up 5 goals against the Rivermen on the first Friday night game in what was an absolute track meet of a game. He's got guys who can put the puck in the net, but what stands out most is his team defense and his goaltending. I mean, you got Mason Bopit there, who, while he hasn't had that much success against the Rivermen, he's put up some quality games. I mean, the 2-0 victory the Rivermen had against Bopit and the Marksmen on Saturday night was not Bopit's fault. He played outstanding that game. And then, of course, you got Colby Muse, who had 2 victories against Peoria on Friday and Sunday night. The Marksmen have 2 great goaltenders, and when they buy in for team defense, they block shots in layers. That combination is going to keep them in a ton of games this year. And they also have frankly, a very opportunistic offense. Like, you look on Sunday night's game, the key game-breaking goal was off a rush and a deflection in front. And you look at a lot of the other goals on Friday night as well, it was off of deflections. It was off of crazy bounces. It was guys being in the right place at the right time. It's a very opportunistic offense that the Marksmen have this year. But that does complement a team defensive style that plays well in front of 2 high-quality goaltenders. There's a lot of great goaltenders in the SPHL this year.
And Jack Bosted's been at the top of that with leading the league in goals against average and save percentage right now. I do want to ask you about kind of something off topic, because it is a few weeks in the rearview mirror, but have to ask. Several weeks ago, Peoria, Roanoke at the Berglund Center, that Saturday night game, players ejected, coaches ejected. I wouldn't have been surprised if a broadcaster had been ejected. Looking at you, Mitch Stewart. I'm just kidding.
I love Mitch too much. I wouldn't do that to him. He and I are too close. We came into the league at the same time.
Well, we give Mitch a hard time on the podcast. That's kind of the rule. That's a house rule. But what happened in that game between the Rail Yard Dogs and the Rivermen that Saturday night in Virginia?
So, second game of a very close fought weekend series. Now, I always said, and Mitch will echo me on this, Peoria and Roanoke have a rivalry of respect. I don't know how much more respect was going on that weekend, but it also, you've got 2 coaches in Jean Guy Trudel and Dan Bremner who played with each other, or excuse me, Coach Trudel had Dan Bremner as his captain here in Peoria. They coached against each other. Jean Guy Trudel won a President's Cup championship in that building against Dan Bremner. And you also have, and it also doesn't help, that you also have a guy like Joseph Widmar, who is just lighting up the league right now, played with the Rivermen for a number of years, knows a number of people on this Rivermen roster, and now is having great success. So all the ingredients are there for, if things don't quite mesh well, then it could cause some explosions. And I always say, and Jean Guy Trudel always says this too, gives Roanoke a ton of credit. Unlike a number of teams in the South, Roanoke plays a very heavy style. Coach Trudel has often said they are one of the few teams in the South that plays a kind of quote-unquote northern style of hockey. Fast, physical, heavy. The Knoxville Ice Bears do play that as well on occasion. We've seen that a number of times this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to disparage anything. I'm just telling you what Coach Trudel has told me about the Rail Yard Dogs. But what happened there, it was just a couple of awkward plays, a couple of hack and whacks after the play that started to escalate. And then just one thing leads after another. Tristan Trudel gets lined up for a face-off against Joseph Widmar. They try to go at each other. Widmar backs out. Another guy comes in. Trudel has a fight. And then the next play, and a lot of it was centered, I think, on Joseph Widmar for whatever reason. I mean, he's one of the best players on Roanoke's roster, so maybe that just tells you what you need to know, but who knows? But it's just a lot of back and forth, a lot of stuff after the play. There's a huge fight. Idel Adinier just demolishes a man from behind the net. And for whatever reason, that just sent Dan Bremner off. He threw a towel into the Rivermen bench. And it's on video. If you go back and watch it, you'll see the towel get thrown in there. And Bremner just starts looping around and starts yelling at Jean-Guy Trudel. And you've seen this from Coach Bremner over against Knoxville, I believe. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before that.
It was the year before, yeah.
And we've seen this. Yeah, but we've seen this before. And then Jean-Guy Trudel starts yelling back at him, and I started noticing, I'm like, oh my gosh, if Dan Bremner gets into that bench, I don't want to know what's going to happen. Because here's the thing with Jean-Guy Trudel. We call him the big bear for a reason. He's very protective, but if you get on his bad side, let's put it this way: you don't want to mess with Jean-Guy Trudel if you get on his bad side. When he gets that look in his eye, I know plenty of the players know that he's played with him over the years know what I'm talking about. But they just start going at each other, and the crazy thing here, this whole thing, Joel, was we were not even 8 minutes into that game. And the coaches get tossed out. Bremner gets tossed. Jean-Guy Trudel gets tossed. I had a couple fans ask me why. It's like, I don't know why Coach Trudel got tossed. You'd have to ask the referees that. But the funniest thing was as Guy is walking out, the fans are giving to him. All he does is just points, just 2 rings, holds up 2 rings. So you bring up me and Mitch Stewart. Mitch Stewart and I have a great relationship. We came into the league at the exact same time. In our first year, we coached, we called a President's Cup final against each other, and then his team eliminated my team the following year. If we ever got into a spout, all I'd have to do is just this. All I have to do is that. That's all. That's not dig at him or anything like that, but I love Mitch to death. He's a great friend of mine. But if we ever got into it's like, oh yeah, would you get involved in a little bit of a spat? 2 rings.
Several rings between the 2 of you, though, in a short amount of time.
Yes. 3. Yes.
3 straight,
3
actually.
rings. Yes. 3 straight.
And I'm sure that rivalry will continue as Peoria and Roanoke continue to put on quite the show whenever they play, not just from the antic standpoint, but especially from the hockey, some very high-quality playoff series during that time as well. He's Jason Ruff, the voice of the Rivermen. He will have the call for you on Flow Hockey if you're listening on the home feed this weekend for Friday and Saturday. He is who you will hear calling the Rivermen and the Ice Bears. Of course, we'll have the Ice Bears call for you on the away side as Flow Hockey continues to present you all SPHL games throughout the course of this season as the official streaming partner of the SPHL. Jason, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you later this weekend. Have good calls this weekend, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Joel, can't wait to see you. It's always a pleasure when you get to come up north. Can't wait to see you. Let's have a great weekend this Friday and Saturday.